Hey everybody, Cody Menz here with a video about the current Waffentrager event for 2023 here, happening in World of Tanks. I'm going to go over a bit about basically what you can expect from this event, specifically the tanks that are in the boxes that go alongside of this event that you're able to purchase. Specifically this tank here, because it's, I feel like, kind of the largest carrot dangling off the end of the stick in front of you. I'm going to play a battle in it after I go through some tanks and a little bit about the event in general. Basically, for anyone that is not aware, so before we get into things, the Waffentrager event is coming back essentially again here at the end of September and kind of going into October here. This year, essentially, they've updated a bit about the event, which I'll have the links to the article that you see here in the video description. You know, essentially this mode, it's not for everybody. I feel like some people freaking love it because it is kind of interesting. The basis of it is there's a team of players essentially playing against one person in the Blitztrager, E110 or E220 if it's a community contributor sometimes. Basically, they shifted some things around and adjusted some tanks and stuff. With the mode, though, a big part of it is essentially progressing. You have rewards, essentially bleh, for playing the event. And more or less, there's the paid loot boxes, you know, for lack of better words. They're not called loot boxes, but they are. Now, getting down to the reward vehicles, that's going to be the main part of this video, because that's the main reward. Not exactly 100% sure on the drop percentage. However, last year it was, I believe, 2.4% for a tier 8, tier 9 tank, essentially in the boxes. Could be different this year. Could, you know, be the same. And usually with these types of events, they have like a pity roll where if you don't get one every about 50 boxes, you end up getting one that you don't own already. Now, will it be like this year? Wait to see. Definitely read Wargaming's article specifically about this, but they have not put that out yet as of the time of me recording this video. Last but not least, you'll see some community contributors, whether in NA, EU, other servers, playing the Waffentrager Blitztrager, excuse me, E220. If you see one of these hanging about, if you kill it, you essentially get a free loot box, the paid version, for beating it. They do have some, you know, basically videos and stuff, you know, going on about this too, which is decent to where you can catch up on the story if you care about it. Now, getting into the boxes, because Wargaming hasn't released a specific, you know, list of them. Their video that I'll also link here does go a little bit into it. More or less, the boxes come with 100 gold a piece. Last year, I think they cost about $1. So, you know, the value's there if you want the, say, smaller items. 100 gold, and then you have a high probability of dropping, so credits, screw books, demounting kits, personal reserves, premium time, stuff like that. You have a smaller possibility, which I think this was around like 20-ish%, to where they do have 3D styles, which I'll show off here as well. And then a very low possibility of getting, so rental battles for the Waffentrager E100 to play in standard battles, which I think is stupid, but they do anyway. And if it's similar to last year, around 2.4% to get some tanks. You know, this year they do have some new tanks and a lot of existing tanks where, as I kind of go into this, you know, is it worth buying these? I think the boxes are very similar, to be completely honest, and it's a little easier to see the specific tanks. So you have the new KJPZ Jager 3, which is a tier 9 German tank destroyer. It is a premium tank. You have the existing tank that a lot of people don't have, which is a reward tank. It is not a premium, the Object 283. And then Jagdtiger Prototype that a lot of people, so nobody on NA and EU has yet. That's the other, you know, new tank, and then a bunch of existing tanks. if they're similar to, you know, how it worked last year, for people essentially getting these boxes, if you own all the tanks except for the new ones, you know, they're not bad value. You know, it's not, you know, it's basically worth it to get them if you want those tanks. If you don't have a lot of the tanks, do not buy the boxes if you're trying to get one specific tank, because there's a lot of tanks in there and it's very low. It's a very low probability of you actually getting one of these tanks. So I'll leave it at that. In any event, what can you expect tank-wise? Because there is a lot of tanks here, as you can see. Each one of these is in these boxes, and you know, I'm going to start basically from tier 9 and work my way down. T3 Jager. This tank essentially is pinpoint accurate, but it sucks. It's essentially taking a Leopard prototype and giving it worse DPM, worse penetration, worse mobility, has no armor, actually has less armor than a Leopard prototype, and you get better accuracy. Whoop-de-frickin-do. It sucks. But this is essentially going to be the, I guess, the carrot that they dangle in front of you. I don't see the, you know, rush to get this thing, especially because the crew setup, 3 crew members, and no other German tank from my understanding fits into this. It's kind of weird. It kind of feels TL7, you know, vibe, where that tank coming out, I think that was last year. Not very good. Very quirky and weird, and you know, you hardly ever see it because performance-wise is not great. Basically, this just single shot, semi-turret, 0.27 accuracy for the base value, so literally no RNG because the thing's pinpoint accurate. Very low DPM in my opinion, and you know, mobility, it's not awful, but again, it's slower than the closest thing, which comparison-wise, in my opinion, is the Leopard prototype, maybe the Conway with the smallest gun. But this tank, honestly, it's not great. You'll still be able to do damage and stuff, but pretty much your role is just to sit, you know, on the red line and snipe people. Yay. Object 283. So this tank was part of Holiday Ops last year, and this is not a premium tank. Keep that in mind. This tank also sucks, which, you know, don't look too much into these stats. The one in the comparisons have 100% crew. This is 55. This basically, you know, it's got armor, rear turret at medium, and, you know, this was released where you could get it as a rental or a permanent tank, and most people just got rentals with the way that they did it. This tank, again, stat-wise, not very good. You don't see too many people play it because, you know, it's not completely worthless, I guess, if you value it as a tier 8 tank, but as a tier 9, and especially not being a premium tank, it's just a reward tank, so you don't get extra credits. It's very lacking. You're better off playing essentially like a rear turret heavy if you want to play a tank like this, because as a medium tank, you know, it doesn't pull its weight at tier 9. Another tier 9, the T54 Heavy Tank. This is a premium tank. So this tank, more or less, you have a high alpha single shot American heavy, because 450 damage is pretty decent. Very reminiscent, you know, of other American tanks around the high tiers. This tank, a lot of people don't like too much because, again, low DPM. At least, you know, I kind of like playing it because the gun, you know, does hit a little bit harder. It does have 12 degrees of gun depression, but that's about all, you know, that's all that's going for this tank essentially, because you do have a cupola weak spot. Mobility, you know, a little bit low, and, you know, it's got decent view range, but more or less you're just playing like a higher alpha version of, and with more gun depression, you know, versus other American, you know, heavies at that tier. It's not fabulous. It's better than the first two in my opinion, but it's still not considered like a great tier 9, you know, tank in general. The next tank, which is new for a lot of people, except for the Southeast Asian server, the Jagdtiger Prototype. This tank is actually decent. It's not going to be for everybody because, you know, there is a similar, you know, there's 2 similar tanks to the tier 9 Jagdtiger, and there's also the tier 8 Jagdtiger 8.8 centimeter. This is very different though because it does have the large 490 damage gun on it. Versus the 8.8, which has a very tiny gun. This tank pretty decent. You know, the armor holds up a little bit better at tier 8. It still gets, you know, cut through by premium rounds, obviously. But this one actually, I think performance-wise, does okay if you like casemate TDs. It's a little bit large, and, you know, the armor doesn't hold up too well if you're thrown into a tier 9 or a tier 10 battle. So keep that in mind. But otherwise, you know, this is probably one of the better tanks. It's just very slow, given that you're, or excuse me, wrong thing here, but it's very slow given that you're playing essentially a down-tiered tier 9 tank. But this one, so far, you know, through the first 4 tanks, is the best out of the bunch. Moving on to the next tank, and I'm just going to glance through these ones because most people know these already. The TVP, this tank, really freaking good. Essentially, this is one of the better tier 8 tank destroyers. We're getting into the existing tanks. The existing tanks are actually much better than the new ones. CS52 LIS, another very good tank in my opinion. You know, this is kind of like a heavier medium at this tier compared to like the TVP, which is a light TD. So this is another good tank. Strv 81, this one, you know, is lacking a little bit. Like very similar, you know, is essentially an unskinned Primo Victoria, where this tank, you know, it's okay. You know, it's basically a premium Centurion, but you know, it's definitely, this is showing a bit of its age because it hasn't really been adjusted in recent memory. Senlac, some people will definitely consider this awful. You know, it's one of these things where it's a it's a light tank where it's a little bit less of a pure scout, has a bit better gun, you know, and doing less damage per shot than the tech tree British ones. But light tanks, you know, are pretty small as far as the players that really like them to begin with, to where this is kind of, you know, a little bit of a downer if you grab this if you don't like lights. I kind of like playing the Senlac, but performance-wise, it's not great. K2, this is a tank that was released, what was it, like an auction or something, and a lot of people were essentially like bad-mouthing and sleeping on this thing. You're basically getting an IS-4 at tier 8. The thing is slow as hell, not going to win any races. The gun, you know, a little bit derpy, but honestly, this tank, I think, is pretty freaking good. If people don't know to overmatch you on your roof, because it can get overmatched, I believe, 90 millimeters and up, this thing is virtually, like, impenetrable. If you come across, like, tier 6s, tier 7s struggle, tier 8 struggle. This thing, I actually really like playing this thing. So I think it's a good tank, unless you really hate tanks with bad guns. I'm just going to delete a couple here, just because my webcam's covering. The M4Y, this tank is, what, 2 holiday ops old, I believe. This tank's, I think, okay. It's a little bit different. I feel like a little bit trending more towards the mediums than the Tech Tree American Yo line that this is kind of the premium for. This is more medium-esque than a heavy, but it still provides, you know, I think it's pretty good playing. You don't see tons of people rolling around because, sure, there's better, overpowered, great premium tanks, but the M4Y, I like playing it. Last but not least is the ISU 152K. You're essentially getting the ISU 152 with the, basically the original, what is it, the BL-10 gun. That's what it is, forgot the name. I like playing this tank. Yes, it's a one-trick pony, but it does its job well, which is basically just chuck out a large 750 damage round at tier 8, and that's about all it does. But I think it's actually kind of fun. Mobility-wise, it's not awful either. It's not the fastest thing, but pretty much you're just shoot, scoot, and hopefully people don't rush you and kill you before you reload. Anyway, I'm going to jump into a fight here, since I've been talking for about, what, 14 minutes here. Let me make sure I got things set up, and we're going to kind of see how things go here. Good, bad, ugly, who knows. I'm just going to play this tank, though, because this, I feel like, is the, you know, it's the main tank that a lot of people are going to be, which, that was a really good video editing, you know, there, making my webcam go right across that screen. Oof, amazing. The T3 Jager, I can't stress enough though to where the tier 9s in these boxes, it's really depressing. Where, don't get me wrong, I don't want tier 9 to end up like tier 8 where there's just flat out crazy overpowered, you know, great tanks that are all premium tanks. But this tank is literally, it's almost depressing that they, when you compare it to the Leopard prototype, that's what I did in my separate video for this tank, that I did well before I even got this tank on this account. It was basically just reviewing it in a garage a patch or two ago. The lack of damage per minute, and given that you're slower, you know, and this is comparing a TD to a medium. Not only are you slower, with less penetration and less DPM, it's just all around it's worse except for the accuracy. And I feel like they could have done a little bit better job in this, and it still wouldn't be too good for a premium tank. But the best thing with this is you're getting pretty much one of the most accurate tanks in the game, especially if you say don't include, you know, tanks in siege mode. But yeah, it's about all that this tank has going for it, which is, it's kind of sad because I feel like it's hard enough to play tanks that are, you know, low armor, and pretty much that's the only thing they got going for them. But you know, maybe I'll be wrong about this, where luckily I have a tank, I guess, trying to YOLO the new tank. But this thing is very much going to be, you are a support tank through and through, because unlike, say, the Leopard prototype that can shoot and scoot around a little bit more, your turret's fully functional, you have a bit more DPM, you're very much going to be reliant on your teammate here, and especially the maps as well, because if you get a map where you're not able to kind of use distance, you're definitely going to be struggling a little bit. But something to say though about basically perfect accuracy, where shooting at far ranges in this tank, if you miss, most likely it's going to be your fault. You know, you might end up bouncing, you know, stuff still, but oh shit, the ELC even actually, oh, I can't turn my turret, I forgot about that. So your turret is not fully traversable, which I definitely forget that for a second. Alright, let's see what we got here. But point of this video though, a little bit, you know, about gameplay for this tank, which my fault, you know, I definitely missed that. But specifically for this event, you know, the gameplay, I think the Waffentrager event, it's fun to play, but you know, it definitely, you know, it's not for everybody, you know, when it comes to whether you're playing like on the Harrier side or as the Waffentrager itself. When it comes to, which, oh man, I'm definitely gonna try to run away here. Not being able to turn your turret, you know, left all the way is definitely, or left and right all the way is definitely rough. But the rewards, how they set up these boxes, and each year that they've done them this way, everyone likes to, you know, rip it apart. These are not like the Holiday Ops boxes. There's less gold in each of them. They are cheaper, you know, the boxes, like individual boxes. But a lot of the stuff that you're getting, you know, the crew books, the credits, stuff like that, there's less per box. So you're really, like, the tanks you're getting, it's a lot more random with the amount of tanks they have in it. Plus you're getting less gold, so unless you need, you know, like crew books and the random little, you know, credits and stuff in there, it's definitely, you need to definitely weigh whether or not they're worth it for you, because if you're somebody that you're trying to go after, say this tank, you don't own every single tank that you possibly could have up to this point, you're probably not going to get the tank. like take even myself. I'm going to be going into this not owning this tank, the Projekt 283, and also the Jagdtiger Prototype. So theoretically, I'm going to need, if there's that pity mechanic, and if you're watching this video, most likely you'll be able to check to see if there is that, because, you know, they'll have the article out by then. But, which, oh man, I got ammo wrecked. I do not have something to fix that. I'm going to need at least 150 boxes, you know, to be able to get all 3 tanks if I don't roll it, you know. Oh, that ELC is going to get me. Excuse me. But it's something to be said to where if you don't own anything, is it worth getting, you know, 50 boxes if they have that mechanic in there? I think so, but you always have to go into look at it from the perspective of what you're minimally gonna get, and if you get the worst possible premium tank out of it, because otherwise you're gonna be honestly depressed and let down. But at the end of the day, the tank selection they have in here, the Jagdtiger Prototype is probably the best out of the new tanks, and the existing tanks, there, you know, there is the Strv 81 and the Senlac, but the rest of them, you know, I think are actually pretty good selections. Where if you don't own those tanks, you know, I think they picked pretty good tanks when it comes down to it. Now, I'm just waiting for the battle to end here. Since we just played the T3 Jager, though, granted this is a very small sample size, just one battle that you're seeing here. I'll stress though, don't buy these boxes specifically just for this tank. Do your homework about the stats, and personally, like, you can compare it against other tank destroyers, but I'd compare it against a Leopard Prototype if it's me. The tank, it's definitely Wargaming's banking on the pinpoint accuracy being the selling feature of this tank and kind of making it perform well. But, you know, we all know with the amount of maps in the game that are smaller and the way that a lot of battles work out, you know, having low DPM as a tank destroyer and a TD that can't really do anything except for sit at far ranges, and you don't have that DPM or like super high alpha, it's definitely going to hurt this tank. But it does its job otherwise well as being a redline sniper, and some people love that. Anyway, though, yeah, thanks again for watching this, and before we kind of close out here, I'm just going to show the 2D styles where I was playing with the one called, what is it, or Great Hunt. There is Blitztech, which I've never been a fan of the Waffentrager styles, but they do seem to have, so there's Blitztech, Great Hunt, Microchip, Central Processing Unit, and then high voltage equipment here. And these are the ones you're going to be able to get in the boxes, from what, you know, I understand. And then there's an existing style. This is from the 2022 event, the Lightning, and I don't think there's any others unless I'm mistaken. So there are these extra little, you know, styles that you can get in these boxes to where more likely to get these than the tanks themselves. So some people like collecting these. At this point, I have way too many of styles, so they've kind of, you know, I've kind of ignored them as rewards anymore because there's just so many of them. Anyway, though, thanks for watching this video. Hopefully it helps you with the event and also the specific tanks in it. And otherwise, if not, have fun playing the Waffentrager, Blitztrager, or playing the Harrier tanks for the various ones that they have. Thanks. See you in another video. Have a good one.